just embracing opportunity and sometimes creating the opportunity. And I say just like it's a simple thing because not everybody does it, as you know. Life is for living, isn't it, really?
Sometimes in life, you meet someone that you know that you are destined to meet. And for Alan and myself, that was Joanna Tomlins. And we were so pleased when she agreed to come on to the Digital Circus Live today. She is one of the most inspirational people and proof in the pudding that if you want something big in life, you have to make it happen for yourself. You have to grab those opportunities when they are presented to you and you run with it. Sometimes not ever really knowing the bigger picture, going on the adventure to find out what that looks like. We're so pleased about this episode. It is a mind-blowing one. You're not going to want to miss it. So make sure, whilst you're watching, you give us a little thumbs up. And of course, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. We'd love it if you did. See you soon. Joanna, thank you so much for being with us today. And as we do with every single episode of the Digital Circus Live, we start with one very important question. It's a big one. What is it that you are trying to achieve right now?
Oh gosh, if I'm talking about my business life, one of the biggest things I'm trying to achieve is how to manage actually letting go, and I'm considering taking on a manager or a co-manager. And so that's my biggest challenge at the moment, as well as keeping all the baby trees alive, of course. And for the Hatari chili sauce business, the biggest challenge really at the moment is how to get it out there more, because it's been available in the market now for about a year, and the products are in lots of farm shops, but we really think that everybody who's interested in chilies should be buying our products, but they aren't yet. So 2 sets of challenges.
Yeah, and yet is the big word. And that's what we love, is people have that mentality. It's not happening now, but it will happen in the future. Yeah. So it's that yet is such an important word there. And just whilst we're on the subject of achieving, do you have a personal achievement at the moment, what you're trying to achieve personally?
So I really fancy the idea of being a writer. And I've got loads of ideas for stories whizzing around in my head, some of which are based on my own life experiences, and some are stories that have just popped into my head. But it's managing my time to give me time to be able to do that. And I was thinking about this just coming back on the train from London last night, thinking, I should have brought a notebook to write things down. You know, when you look at people and you think, oh, what an interesting looking character, or the landscape, or the conditions, what the person is saying on the overhead speaker thing on the train. You know, we're now approaching Tiverton Parkway. Mind the gap. Yeah, so there you go. I'd like to be a writer, but another big thing is our son's getting married in 3 weeks at our venue, I'm delighted to say, and we're thinking about different ways to support them to have a really fab wedding. Yeah.
I find every time we record one of these, in this kind of opening part, there is so much, right? There is so much. So we've got the creativity that, imagine living in a world like your head, Joanna, in a nice way, where you're on the train and you're hearing all this and you're seeing it like evolve into, I don't know, they are characters, you know, how creative is that? And what I love is, because we kind of know you, we know you, and, you know, we know you in internet world and business world and everything. And I can see that creativity in everything you do. And what I think is fascinating is you run a wedding venue, in inverted commas, but it's so much more than that. Yeah. When you bring in your creativity and everything else, it just comes across in what you do. And I find it fascinating.
Absolutely.
So when I got off the train...
Let's roll it back. So...
Okay. Go on then.
No, go.
Well, I was going to say, when I got off the train at Exeter St. David's Gary, my husband, picked me up and we came home, and he had spent the day adding on an extra stretch tent to the one we've already got, and lacing it up with loads of lights, and it just looked amazing. And he's really creative. He's not a typical grower person at all. He's really creative, very musical, really good at big ideas. And we just had a celebratory drink under our sort of fairy light lit stretch tent, and it was just lovely. Yeah, really exciting. Lovely
love
thing to
that.
I
come
want to be
home.
there. Yeah, I want to be there.
So what I always appreciate about you with Hire Holcomb and Hatari is that you're very much a family-run business, and both sides of the coin there. Is that something you ever thought would happen? Was that always part of the plan for it to be you working with your husband, or
No,
is this
no,
something
not at
that's
all.
evolved over time?
It's really evolved. I mean, as you know, Gary and I met in Nigeria, where we were both doing voluntary work, voluntary service overseas.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were both motivated by wanting to give back and travel around Africa and all the rest of it. And then when we settled down and got married, I don't think we had the idea that we'd like to go and live in another country for a few years. But I think we thought we would just come back. He would run a fruit farm. I would go back to teaching, and we'd bring up a family, and we'd save up and take them on lovely holidays. So no plans for businesses at all in any way, shape or form. But it's just been very much a case of, oh, that's a possibility. Let's give it a go. So that's how things have evolved. And it wasn't until about 20 years ago that we started our first business. So just over 20 years ago.
And what was that
Yeah.
first business?
So we had been living in Kenya, and Gary was growing roses for the supermarkets. And I had started a little primary school so that our children didn't have to go to boarding school. And his boss was really good at taking up all Gary's ideas for how he could diverse. I mean, we're talking, it was a multi-million-pound supplying roses and runner beans into the supermarkets. And Gary said, he's always taking our ideas. We should keep some ideas for ourselves. What can we do? What can we do? So we just looked around our garden on the farm where we lived in Lake Naivasha in Kenya. And it's like, well, we can't do fresh flowers. That's all sewn up. Why don't we try drying some flowers? And from that, we developed a natural bougainvillea flower petal confetti company called Passion for Petals. So in 2000, we started a bougainvillea flower petal confetti business. And that's how it all began, really.
So we've got a million questions once again, Joanna, from that part. So there's the creativity part once again being there all the way forward. But also you talked about being a teacher, and you guys had moved over with voluntary services overseas and everything else. But and we see this with quite a lot of creatives, that sometimes the business element doesn't come naturally. So for you guys, obviously you had the catalyst of the boss kind of robbing all the fab ideas. Was there anything else perhaps stopping you doing the business idea, or anything else where you went, oh, stuff it, let's just do it? What was that literal kind of point of turning into business?
I think it was, like I say, we were living in Kenya when we had the idea to pick the bougainvillea bushes in our garden and dry them in the airing cupboard. And Gary, because he was, he was the agronomist director for this company, he said, well, we need to think big. I'm thinking, let's grow 10 bushes. And Gary's going, no, we need acres. You cannot create a market for a product that's brand new. And we didn't even know if anybody would be interested in petal confetti. And it was like, well, what have we got to lose? Let's just give it our best shot. And so this was the year 2000. It was the beginning of the internet and everything. We heard that people had websites. It's like, okay, let's get a website. And first of all, it was just an information website. We went to the NEC in Birmingham and threw loads of petals around. Deliveries came from Heathrow with all our petals in boxes, and I mixed them up in the bathtub. And it was very exciting to actually see people respond to our product. And when everybody came past our stand at the National Wedding Show at the NEC, I would just throw a handful of petals over people. And if they kissed, I'd give them a free box.
I love that.
So we really did like the whole interaction with people, and being, it's just so lovely to see people respond positively to something that you've created. But actually it got quite lonely, the whole petal thing. I didn't teach. I did do a bit of supply teaching in the winter months when we first started, because by that time we'd moved to Devon. But I actually really missed people. And at the time, the only time I got to see people is when I went shopping and when we did a wedding show. So so that lasted about 7 or 8 years before we built our house that we're living in now. And I discovered that nothing terrible happened if I spent the day out choosing taps and tiles. And I'd come back home and press a button on the computer, and these orders had just come down. We discovered Google pay-per-click, and it seemed a lot easier in those days, actually. We didn't really need social media or anything like that. We didn't know about social media. So, yeah. And that's how we know you, because we need to know about social media. But yeah, let's just give it a go. See what happens. That's the thing. It seems like a good idea. Let's give it a go.
Totally.
And that is the theme that I'm kind of getting from you from just this very short, brief conversation. And we rolled it back a couple of minutes ago when you were living in Africa, and you just said it completely out of the. Oh yeah, we decided to start a school so my children didn't have to go to boarding school. You know, that gun ho. I'm going to start my own school there. Fascinating. You're talking about growing roses, and you're starting with 10 bushes, and your husband's there going, no, we're having acres and acres. That's a very big decision to make. You know, moving countries several times. You've just said about you've built your own house. They are big, life-changing things.
I am laughing at how easily these are rolling off Joanna's tongue. Oh yeah, we went to Africa. We started a business. We built a school. We built our house. There's other people having a panic attack sitting there just thinking about doing one of these, and you're making it sound like the next day in your life.
And that's not to because we completely appreciate the levels of stress and involvement and time and money and all of that comes into decisions like that. But what I've always appreciated with you, Jo, from the brief few years that we've known each other pretty well now, is that you are always willing to put 2 feet in and give it a go, both from the higher Holcomb perspective with your wedding venue. And I love you're building it in plain sight as well. We're watching you evolve that business and evolving with the eco side of it, and we're watching you growing Hitari, and you've never shied away from that fact. You don't know everything, but you're going to give it the best shot you can, and you're going to learn as much as you can on that journey. And I've always appreciated that with you. Always, 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 Gemma. So thank you for sharing it with us, number one. Number two, how do we get to be a bit more like you?
Yeah, can we all have some, please?
Well, do you know something? I think you guys actually remind me of us when we were younger. So, the thing is, it's just embracing opportunity and sometimes creating the opportunity. And I say just like it's a simple thing because not everybody does it, as you know. But yeah, life is for living, isn't it, really? And if you... we were able, when we lived in Kenya, we were able to save up a bit of money, and it just seemed like, well, what's it for if we're not going to use it for adventures, whether they're adventures in life or adventures in business. So that's been our motto, really. And not everything's worked. I mean, you could say that although I enjoyed learning how to be in business with Passion for Petals, it was, I'd be taking my big sacks down to the post office every day at 5:20, and and there'd be great big queues behind me because everyone's rushing there before it closes at 5:30. And then the post office man would say, Jo, can we pick these up from you tomorrow? It's like, okay. And I'd give him a jam jar full of money and he would pick up my petals for me and sort them all out. It's, you've just got to go with the flow, really. Yeah.
You do. I think one of the other bits you said about passions for petals that stuck with me was two parts. One was the mixing it in the bath. You know, the things as a small business owner, our clients will never see, right? Like, you know, they just won't ever sit or think that. But the other one was the fact that you said you missed people. So I was wondering how you'd gone from kind of Africa to, you know, now I know about passion for petals into Higher Holcomb. And it was that you'd either you knew already or you worked out whatever, you know, that you needed to work with people. So now I can see that natural transition into Higher Holcomb. Was there anything in between Passion for Petals and the wedding venue, or was it what from one into the other?
Well, no, that's when Tanzania came in.
Oh, okay. So,
That's my husband. He went into business. He wanted a new professional challenge. We'd left Kenya. He did a few years of consultancy advising African farmers how to develop their businesses, to export fresh produce. But he wanted to get his hands dirty again. So he came up with the idea that he would try organic farming, vegetable farming. And he went into business with somebody and bought half of a farm in France. But the children were still at school. I can't speak French. I didn't want to go to France. And anyway, that didn't work out in the long term. But then we had the opportunity to go to Tanzania, which excited me far more than going to France. We'd already lived in Kenya, so I knew a little bit about Kiswahili. So it was different enough, but familiar enough. And the children by then had all left home, and I had a great few years teaching at a British international school in Tanzania. And Gary went off to do this aid job, which he didn't like either, and again said, I want to get my hands dirty, and started growing chilies for export on land that we rent. And again, it's tapping into that whole thing is, being in an office and ticking boxes wasn't for him. He wanted to be growing something. Whereas I loved my teaching job, and it was just fantastic. It was a really fantastic few years for us. And it was while we were there, the trees were growing at Higher Holcomb. What can we use this? And Gary had the idea. He said people would love to come on holiday and go camping in the woods. And that was how we started our Higher Holcomb. We got planning permission to use the old dairy for people to, have their showers and loos and things. And it was somebody else who said to us, this would be really fantastic for really special occasions. And so we started thinking of it more as a special occasion venue rather than a holiday camping place. So so it's listening to other people, isn't it, as well as going with the flow. And we really enjoy developing the woodland. I love the outdoor work. I do love people. I love meeting the couples. I get genuinely excited about their plans for their big day. I really do love it. And we're both really practical, flexible, problem-solving people. Where other people see barriers, we see ways of making things happen positively. So I think that is a unique skill set, not to us,
yeah.
obviously,
no,
but
it is.
we are problem solvers and we're very flexible. I can't remember where I was going with that.
We got,
Who cares?
we got-
Joanna, who cares? It's fascinating. I'm loving this.
What is the thing you love the most about your job?
So there's two bits that I love actually. I do really love meeting the couples and seeing what they create. I love it. I love seeing that. And although I've said I really love people, I actually love fighting the brambles on the land. I love fighting the brambles. I get it brings out the feistiness in me, and I don't have elegant hands. They're usually doing some grubby job, but I love seeing the woodland mature and seeing all the wild flowers flourish and fighting the brambles. I love it.
I can just have this
I've got an
image in my
image.
head, and I go,
I've got
yeah.
a lot of images. This comes back to you being on the train again, Joanna. Can I ask a question? Right. So I don't know if how far back we've gone. So we've covered teacher. Was teaching your first career job? You know, as you started, or was there kind of anything relevant and significant beforehand?
No, I trained to be a teacher. From there, I went to do voluntary work in Nigeria. I came back and I taught in the East End of London, then in Kent, and it was while we were living in Kent. Gary was running a fruit farm that grew strawberries, apples, and pears, and that's where we were when we got married.
Oh,
Um,
lovely.
and it was what was the question again? I've lost my thread. Oh yeah, but yeah. So I was teaching, and then we went to live in Spain. Yeah,
Wow.
we went to live in Spain from Kent, which didn't work out. Then we went to live in Portugal. And the babies were little, and we were in our 30s, and it was all fine. But of course, we took loads of risks. Absolutely loads of risks. People thought we were
Yeah.
mad. You're giving up your job, you're giving up your career. Gary was a well-respected farm manager in the company, and it's like, no, let's go to Spain and have a couple of years, and we'll come back when Rosie's 5. Well, she was 2 when we left, and Joseph, our son, who's getting married in 3 weeks' time, he was 6 weeks old when we went to live in Spain. And Annie May, our youngest, was 6 weeks old when we went to live in Kenya. So, moving countries with small babies and toddlers, we can do that. So, yeah, people thought we were mad.
No, no, I think even if you did it nowadays, people would think you were mad. But obviously, we know you're not. But like, what's the driver for this? What is this a driver for adventure? Is this a driver? You know, you talked about Gary wants to grow stuff and get his hands dirty, and you both like that. Is this? And you've talked about life for living, but people's definition of life for living is different for them, individual for them. Yours is clearly about, right, let's go to Spain, let's go to Portugal, let's go to Tanzania, let's go to Kenya. You know, let's go to Kent, let's go to Devon. Is there a driver for that part, or is it just, no, that just feels natural and the right thing to do?
Well, you asked the question at the beginning about did we have a game plan, and no, we never did, but we've always embraced opportunity, and between us, we've created opportunity as well. Like when we came back from Kenya and moved to Devon, we should have gone back to our little house in Canterbury, which is where we used to live. But it just felt a bit squishy after you'd been in Kenya, where, we put the kids on bikes and we'd go cycling after giraffes, and the giraffes were not giraffes, zebras. We used to chase after zebras. The giraffes would cross the road.
Because that's
We'd
any
listen to
different.
the hippos at
Not
night.
a giraffe, Emily, a zebra. Yeah.
It's just like seizing the day, I suppose, isn't it, really? But, I had a very ordinary
Yeah.
childhood in southeast London, went to the local comp, and, yeah, I always wanted to travel, I have to say. I've always wanted to travel. And so going across the Sahara from the north of Nigeria is one of my high points. When I left Tanzania, because I got too old to be a teacher there, a friend and I went climbing up the Nyiragonga volcano in the Congo, which has got the largest active lava lake in the world. And I couldn't walk for a week afterwards. But that to me was such a fantastic adventure. And I would, embrace opportunity. Embrace opportunity. That's what I would say.
That's a great ethos. And
When are we going down the pub, Emily? Can we just go and trade adventure stories with Joanna
do you know
and
what?
Gary?
I think it's just proof, isn't it, that the world is such a big old place, and it's there to be seen, and it's there to be embraced. And so many of us will only see a fraction of 1% of the world ever. And, the fact that you've given your children those opportunities too is massive. And so that's something that drives us as well. We've been very fortunate to see some of the world, we want our children to have that same drive to want to go and just step outside their front door and actually go, there's more to life than Curdridge. Or there's more
I was going to say Hampshire, but you're right. Same thing.
It's one of those core pillars and drivers for us is to make sure that our children embrace every opportunity, because it's like that whole say yes, have a yes day. You never know where that's going to take you, and those opportunities, are right in front of you sometimes you don't even realize, but they can take you in such different avenues where you don't quite expect, and it may not have been on your original life plan, but it like those curveballs are so much more exciting, right?
Yeah. And like I say, well, we never really had a plan. Um, it's just go with the flow, really. Go with the flow. I mean, the whole
But
Hatari
isn't that
chili products business is that, sorry?
so, well, I was going to say, isn't that a plan in itself? Yeah, isn't that a plan in itself? Isn't not having a plan a plan? I know that sounds crazy, but it's like I don't do very well when there's nothing to do. Unless I plan to do nothing, then I'm absolutely okay with it. And I know that's semantics,
Yeah.
but that is how my head works. And I kind of feel, look, do you know what? We're not having a plan. We're gonna live life to the max. That's the plan. We're gonna have adventures. We're gonna create and seize
Yeah.
opportunities. Tell me about Hatari Foods, because that sounds fascinating as well.
Yeah, so we were in Tanzania and Gary was renting land not far from Arusha and was growing chilies for export. And our youngest daughter, who's a food scientist, she threw in the towel with her PhD, which was to do with the flavour of celery. Can you believe that people do things like that? She
Is
threw in
there a
the
flavour of
towel, she
celery?
came
Oh my
over to
goodness.
apparently, and she just started experimenting with some of the chilies that were there and trying out a few things. And Gary's very musical. He plays the saxophone and the guitar and the flute. And we used to and because the farm was a chili farm, we decided to have these little mini festivals, and we called them chili festivals. And we had this chili festival. This was in 2016. And the day after, loads of people camped in the garden. And the next day, we took all the leftovers down to the river to have a picnic lunch. And Annie Mae had made this jar of chopped up aji chili mash, fermented aji chili. And everybody they couldn't leave it alone. It was like it was some addictive superfood or something. And we looked at it and it's like, gosh, people love this. We should try and do something with this. So that was in 2016, and it was because of having a picnic lunch after one of the chili festivals on the farm in Tanzania. And yeah, so we started with a product for the local market called Mama Moto, which means hot mama. And now we've started Hatari, which, as you know, ironically means danger in Kiswahili. But the Hatari chili products range actually is not silly hot at all. They grow chilies specially for their flavour profile. And that's where Annie Mae's skill set comes in, really. She's the new product development person. I'm just the one who
I love
helps
that.
at the market stalls on Saturdays. Come and taste the chilies.
Well, you're still throwing petals on people, Joanna. This
Yeah.
is honestly, it's like it's just those little things in your life. They don't leave you. They just change, adapt, evolve, or do you in a different way.
I agree, and I just think that once again, proof is that you listen to people, and that that was a fortunate accident. You had an event, and you had people who were trying. That's something she just threw together, and it worked. And you didn't just go, oh, that's nice. They liked our food. You create a business out of it, which is, again, it's really admirable. But what I do want to kind of bring it to is the fact that, once again, you've got your family involved with that as a project, and you've got your daughter involved in that, and it's a real family affair. And how do you? We've had a family business, and we're a family business as a husband and wife. How do you balance business and family to make sure that you are still all on the same page and smiling and waving all day, every day?
Good question, Emily.
Well, do you know something? It's not always easy, is it? Because the whole thing about working with your nearest and dearest is that you don't always have the sort of filters in place that you might have in a sort of otherwise outside professional situation. So there's that. The other thing is, especially with Hire Holcomb, is that there's always something to be done. So, and we're not very good at actually blanking out the calendar and having time. So you talked about having a date night last night, the first for 3 years.
Yeah.
We've started, it's like we really need to have some date days where we actually leave the farm and go somewhere, usually just to a youth hostel in Mevagissey or somewhere. We've recently been to Boscastle. We love the youth hostels. We think they're great. We're very easy to please us. I'm not materialistic. I don't care about flashy things. I care about the environment. I care about people having a lovely time. I love cooking food for my friends and family. And yeah, the thing is, we do probably work a bit too much more than we should. So not that
Well,
great at all of that, really.
So we joked pre-recording this about our date night last night. We were home by 9:15. We're so rock and roll like that. But I think, and what I always appreciate about your lifestyle comparison to ours as well, is that it becomes a lifestyle, right?
It's life. That's the point.
And we've always
isn't it?
talked about work-life balance, but it's more like work-life blend, because your family is your work and your work is your family, and it's what you get up in the morning for. It's what fuels that fire in your belly. It's ticking that adventure line for you. All of those things is part of who you are. So when you're not doing date days, date nights, whatever they look like, whatever they really, really are, just forced fun, in my opinion, it's kind of actually what we enjoy doing is being together on such a massive adventure. And I think your absolute testament to that is you're living your life completely, at the seat of your pants, really, but doing it because you love people, you love your family, you love adventure, you love your roots, both here and in Africa, and you've just tied it up so beautifully that it just is how you are. So, yeah, having date days are great, absolutely, and you probably do need to step away from the business a little bit, but it's very difficult when you love it so much.
And also, if you do go on a date day or date night, what are you going to talk about? The business, because it's your life. And what I find my mum says to me, and dad and stepmom, they go, you guys should take some time off. Like, they'll take the kids for the day, like grandparents will have the kids for the day, and then they go, you guys should relax and go out for lunch or something. And we're like, no,
child-free day.
You've got the kids. We're going to work 110 miles an hour to get as much done as we can, so when the kids come home, we can hang out with them,
Lovely.
It doesn't always.
I think it's a different type of personality that only an entrepreneur would really understand. If you're not an entrepreneur, you're not in your own business, that switch off is just not necessarily something
needed. I think.
Yeah, needed.
I think needed. I don't know. I think some, and then there's individual people in it as well.
So, what's the future for both Hitari and for High Holcomb? Where do you see it in a few years' time?
So this year we planted another 1,450 trees, and we've created a massive boulevard that's 200 metres long. And
a boulevard of broken trees.
And every now and again we'll go and sit in the boulevard, and in 10 years' time I'll be 75, and it's like, in 10 years' time this is going to look really amazing. And I wonder if any of our kids are interested in taking over the management of Higher Holcomb, I wonder how they might use it. We're very lucky that when we bought this land, it's just a sniff under 30 acres. It just happened to come with the planning permission to build a house. And it was just all grassland. It was all grassland because it used to be an old milking farm at some point. We had no idea. We didn't plan. We thought, it'd be nice to get a house with half an acre and a few apple trees for the children to climb. But actually future-proofing our family, we've worked out where really good soil is on the land. And if the world goes to custard, we'll say, right, cut those trees down. That's where you can grow food if it all goes to custard.
When it goes to custard, Joanna, I think nowadays, yeah.
Oh, it's scary, isn't it? It's scary.
It is scary. I think that might be our spin-off podcast series. You know, a couple of these have touched briefly on conspiracies and things like that. And I'm like, that might be the Alan private project away from the business.
Okay, Joanna, we have one final question for you. It's the same question we ask all of our guests. And that is, and you've had an incredible life and some amazing stories. But if you could go back to your younger self, and that could be any age you really want, early teens, 20s, and you could put an arm around your shoulder and give yourself one bit of advice, what would that be?
I think it would be believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. I hated being a teenager. I was rubbish at being a teenager. I was awkward and had terrible hair and ugly glasses, lacked confidence. So I just put my head down and went to school and did all that stuff. And I would, believe in yourself and appreciate your strengths.
I love that.
I love that.
Joanna, thank you so much for being with us today on the Digital Circus Life. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I feel like I know so much more. I thought I knew you, but clearly...
We did have this conversation. We do a little bit of due diligence on all of our guests before we speak to them. And we went, we've been speaking to Joanna for quite a few years. We've talked about Africa. We talked about this. No, blown away. I've learned so much more. It's been fascinating. Thank you.
So thank you very much. And everybody, we will see you next time on the Digital Circus Live.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.